I'm done. I'll disappear. No, not about that. No, not saying another word about
We don't have to go into that, but we can certainly talk about this full moon coming up and the Uranus aspect and what that's going to mean for the rest of the world. About the US elections. I know we're not talking about the US elections. I get that because it's anybody's guess. Even things are going bump in the night in a solitary confinement hotel room. Pammy, it's so great to talk with you. It's the first time we've talked in 2 weeks.
I know, we must find a way to do this again on this kind of crazy. Does the hour change in New Zealand? You don't know. That's okay.
I'm just laughing to myself because my friend Mark on the South Island, I spoke with him tonight. So we're both in the same country. And he's always funny. He's very Aquarian. He said to me, what time is it where you are? We're both in New Zealand. He's so funny. He said, is it the day before?
But it's 13 hours difference now because our hour went back last weekend. Yes. So for me, it's 9:30 in the morning. For you, it's 10:30 at night, is it?
Exactly. So we're now 13 hours apart.
Yeah, so we'll have to do it somehow. But the mornings are always no good for you?
Well, I think it's going to be variable now. Hopefully, when they let me out of jail, when I'm released, I'm hoping that's going to be a different story. So what's your take then for the next month of the astrology? If you had to sort of give
Wild. It's just going to be wild. I think it's going to be a lot of kind of repeats of what we had in the spring because of the repeating squares between Mars and Eris and there's Capricorn planets. So we're going to be, it's a re-echo, it's a repeat, but it's also saying, where have we now got to with that experience? And I think it's very interesting that earlier in the year we had a lot of retrograde planets. So we're in our caves and it was a new virus and we'd never experienced it before. So we're all kind of hunkering down. Now, although Mercury and Mars are retrograde, the outer planets are all pretty much moving forwards, largely. So, for me, that's how do you feel about the way the governments are handling it? How do you feel? Do you feel the same as you did in spring, or have you learned a lot through the last few months? And how are you feeling now about it? So I think there's that shift. But this upcoming full moon in Taurus on the 31st, within 3 minutes of Uranus, because Taurus is everything that represents stability, isn't it? Security and permanence and longevity and keeping things as they are. And it's the earth, it's fixed earth, it's everything which is steady and unrockable. And then you throw Uranus into the mix, which is the exact opposite. It wants to break the rules. It wants to break up anything that's stale and routine and repetitive. And it's always got a higher purpose to take us to a higher state of being, but it's messy along the way because it can create, as you well know, Bracha, earthquakes, volcanoes, political earthquakes, shocks, surprises, revelations. Full moon shine a light on anything that was in the dark that we didn't know, that could be shocking. Uranus. So, and it will wake people up. Whatever manifestation or manifestations, plural, it's going to have, it's going to be a very volatile energy, a really, I think in many ways, destabilizing energy in order to wake people up to a different view, a different state of being about what's happening. And we'll see where that goes. But the intensity continues through November for sure. And then it shifts in December. Not to suggest we're stepping into paradise, but there is a shift, an energetic shift as much as an astrological shift, I think. And then, we're still into, I think, next year. My take on it is, I will let you speak in a moment. My take on it is that next year we are still into a lot of turmoil because of the collapse of the old buildings. The more people, are coming to understand things, I think, it's in every possible, it's in the astrology, it's in the energetics, it's in the physics. that the old order will continue to collapse. However, we are also going to be seeing more evidence of a new Earth, a new way of being, a new way of living at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of kind of chaos and turmoil, but knowing that it's in order that this new state of being, this new Earth can be birthed. And it will be birthed in very small ways, I think, very tiny ways initially. But that's kind of my take on it. What's your view? I'll stop talking now. What's your view?
I think it's great because I learn from you and we learn from each other. Yeah, there's like a build-up.
Yeah.
I loved your comment about the outer planets are now direct. And now it's like, what's your new perspective on how things have been since the spring, since March, since lockdowns then? And now, how do you see it now? I love that. That's something subtle I haven't really noticed or thought about.
I always make things up when I'm talking to you.
No, you don't, Pammy. You're awesome. No, that's great. So, well, like you, of course, Uranus and the moon together. The moon wants peace, it wants soothing, it wants security in Taurus, wants to know where it is. It's going to be the last thing it's getting. Yeah. It's like, and I'm going to say to people, if you feel emotional, don't eat. Wait until you calm down. Yes, that's what happened to me when I was coming to New Zealand. I was so emotional before the flight because should I go? Should I not? With leaving Greece and leaving my friends and, beloved Greece. I love it there. But it was like, I didn't eat actually for 3 days. It was just so emotional, the journey and the plane and the whole, the pandemic and the COVID and all the other things that were going on. I just thought, if I eat, that is going to get stuck in my system. And I'm really glad I didn't, because I think it helped me very much to recover from jet lag much more quickly than I've ever done before. So I think that was good. So I'm going to say to anybody listening that if you feel emotional, don't eat for a little while, because there's a tendency with moon energy is like you want to stuff down the emotion. And I think the Uranus energy is just going to bring it up. And if you can bring it up and get it out quickly, then you'll feel a lot better.
Yeah.
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 Because I think things are, so I agree with you. I think November is hairy. And of course, we've got the US election, which is going to affect the world. The United States is the most powerful country in the world, and what happens there affects us all. I mean, we're global now anyway, but the United States somehow leads the way. So it's going to be a wild ride. We won't go into that because it's too political. I understand, Pammy, you don't want to get into that. Then we've got that new moon at the middle of November in Scorpio. Which is, it's another intense moon, isn't it? Yeah, there's
absolutely. And more about secrets again. I think they're going to be waves of disclosure from now all the way through next year, waves of disclosure. And, it's very interesting looking at that Saturn-Uranus square next year, which is so dominant through the year. I mean, it's the one dominant aspect, isn't it? And it's sort of breaking down the old order via truth, via revelation, in a way, isn't it? And it's so interesting that Saturn, representing, ruling Capricorn, representing the old, the status quo, the old structure, the way things have always been, the past, the top-down system, and Uranus is this birth of the new, at a higher level. Its orbit is beyond Saturn. And it's new and different and something we've probably never thought of before in the way we live. And it's going to keep on breaking down the old in order to kind of, you see, I almost got an image of green shoots coming through the tarmac, the cracked tarmac.
Yes.
Or the rubble of the building. And that's how that feels to me. So although it isn't going to be a serene year by any measure, you can't put your feet up, just watch television. It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be, there's still going to be a lot of change and turmoil. It's change for the good. It's moving in a better direction.
Yes.
It has
Yes.
purpose. So yeah, that's my feeling. But yeah, I mean, the Scorpio new moon, yeah, another doozy. Then we get into eclipse season, lunar eclipse in Gemini, you know, at the end of 30th of November, and then that very significant solar eclipse on the 14th, just 7 days before the winter solstice, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, and off we go on a whole new beginning, whole new era.
And I think we also should look at it, and I love what you said about the green shoots coming through the tarmac. I think that that's true physically, but also on the emotional, psychological level, that our consciousness is coming through. Yes,
Yes,
it's like
yes, absolutely.
stuff is, you know, and just shoots of human consciousness rising, coming out, you know, beginning to flower, little teeny weeny flowers, but there's the promise of this different consciousness that is coming out of the discomfort, the destabilization. But if we weren't destabilized, we wouldn't be motivated to make these big changes. We wouldn't.
Absolutely. And if you know, if we weren't shifting our consciousness, the change wouldn't have happened, in my view. It would have been same old, you know, just things would have continued as they always have through our lives. But this has created, this shift in consciousness has created massive turbulence because the old cannot continue. And yes, you know, the virus has been part of it, but we all know as astrologers something massive was going to happen anyway. That was about hard times, about constraints, about extreme control, because that's Saturn Pluto. It always has been historically. So you know, so whether it was the virus or something else happening, something had to happen to accelerate Pluto's action in Capricorn, the deconstruction of the old order.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because, you know, and Pluto intensifies whatever it touches. Saturn rules Capricorn in terms of control. So it's power and control very intensely together. And you and I know, look back historically at lots of, you know, grim things that have happened in history with that. So we knew that was coming, but that really, 2020 is a very, very big part of the ending of the old. Yes. That's how I see it. And it'll continue to rumble on for a while, but it's a pivotal year in that, I think.
Yes. Yes. And so I think if you look at your life personally, yeah, I think that we look at ourselves as a global unit. And I think now there's this Uranus energy. And I've just been thinking as you were talking about this square next year, which is really the aspect to be meditating about now before we go into the year, and to think about, well, how could we use what is potentially a challenging aspect, Saturn-Uranus square, Saturn wanting things as they are and Uranus wanting to shake them up. And what I've just realized is that it's not a mutual reception, but Saturn is in Aquarius, Uranus wants to be in Aquarius, and Saturn really would rather be in an earth sign.
Yes, totally.
So there is a sense of a mutual reception. They kind of want to be in each other's places. And I'm wondering if this isn't even a birth of a new energy of Saturn. As astrologers, we need to see Saturn in a different, in almost a light of a Uranian light, and see Uranus, because Uranus Aquarius bridging the gap between Saturn and Uranus Aquarius energy. Sorry, I'm not making sense. It probably makes sense.
No, that's very interesting, because of course
our viewers, please.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because Saturn, of course, is the ancient ruler of Aquarius before Uranus was discovered. So yeah, I absolutely hear that. And that, you know, that is so interesting, isn't it? And, you know, yeah, that's fascinating, because, you know, as you'll remember, Bracha, Saturn limitation constriction, went into Aquarius, sign of freedom. I think it was 22nd of March and stayed until 2nd of July. On the 23rd of March, many countries went into lockdown until roughly the beginning of July. So it was a contraction on freedom. Now, is it going to work that way again when it enters in December? And is that to some extent up to us as a population, as a consciousness? Because our consciousness determines how these planets play out. It's not fated. We are living these energies, and we determine collectively how they live out. They don't force things on us, is my view. So,
I love that, Pam. Yes, it's
even
great.
with a ridiculous lockdown haircut here. So
And you think mine's any better in solitary confinement?
Madness, isn't it?
Can't worry about our hair when we've got to wear masks and all this nonsense, can we?
So I think that's very interesting what you've said, and maybe this is a whole evolution of all of those planetary archetypes that we're moving into, because that's my sense that, and as we talked in our last chat, I have a sense of not only evolution for humanity, but an evolution for astrology as a reflection of that. And, you know, chicken and egg, doesn't matter which comes first, they're part of the same picture.
We have to. And I think that the structures that we're looking for now with Saturn in Aquarius are structures that benefit the whole.
Yeah.
Right?
So
the
humanity
has to be for all. It can't be one government saying, this is our country, and we're going to do what we do for our country, right? This is this egocentric type of energy. And it's got to be much wider and broader. And we're being pushed to that. And with Jupiter in Aquarius as well, I think we're being asked, what have you learned since the lockdown in March? What have we now learned collectively that we can do differently now? Again, for the benefit of the whole. It's not going to be okay to just benefit a small part of the population. It's just not going to work for us. The consciousness has to be that we are one body with trillions of cells or trillions of units that has to work as one.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, gosh, it's just so interesting, because I think there are two things. Yes, I mean, this top-down energy of Capricorn has promoted inequality, in my view. There's massive inequality across the world, massive, you know, even within countries as well. So it's very interesting, I think, with this breakdown of top-down structures, political and social, things are going to be much more decentralized. I think there's going to be a lot of breakup of countries, a lot of breakup of provinces, states. I think that the way we organize society is going to be much, much, much more localized, but at the same time, more global somehow, with a great, so it's a very paradoxical thing. So there's some greater sense of humanitarianism, we're all in this together, we're collaborating, sense of community, and maybe that will be digital and spiritual, but organizationally, it's going to be decentralized. That's my very, very strong feeling. You know, the whole Michael Tellinger one small town concept is one expression of that. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how we as a humanity decide how we want to structure our world going forwards. But I think what's vital is that we're conscious that we're doing that, and not just, you know, watching the telly, moaning about all of it, putting our focus on the collapsing buildings, go to bed. It's not enough. We've got to be conscious of what we are creating as a world going forward, in every moment, in every thought, in every emotion, in, you know, everything we do, because we're at such a pivot point of evolution. We've got to get it right. You can't say, oh, well, I'll get to that in a couple of years' time. You know, I'm busy at the moment. You know, this is pivotal. This is crucial right now, because it's such a jump from where we've been to where we're going. You know, we're not going to have a house soon. And I mean that in a sort of archetypal sense, with the old order collapsing. I don't mean a literal house, but because it's collapsing, what are we going to replace it with? Start thinking that now. What are we going to replace it with that is so much better and loving and compassionate and caring for others that we haven't had in our recent history?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that, Pam.
Only when I talk to you that I sort of get on a rant.
I love you on your rants. I love it.
I get on a roll. I don't know, it must be our interaction somehow, Bracha.
No, I love it. You had a rant in the Apple store, didn't you, the other day?
Oh my goodness. it would have been a brilliant video for Silver Surfers. It was just at my best and at my worst. It was just hilarious. But anyway, it's sorted now.
Love it. No, I love what you're saying here. And I think that in a way we're trying to, I think the ancestors and the knowledge of the ancestors, all this has to be brought into it. Yes, where we've come from, all of our roots. I think this has to be embraced. It's like Maya Angelou says, I come as one, but I bring 10,000 with me. Yes, I can't remember her exact quote. I don't come as one. I think, sorry, I'm misquoting here. But what I'm saying is that we've got a wealth of indigenous knowledge and information that needs to be a part of going forwards. Yes, does that make sense?
I must tell you, before I forget, I must tell you, this is for you personally. A friend of mine who follows your work said to me, I won't say her name, but she said to me, the reason Bracha has gone to New Zealand is to tap into the indigenous energy of the country. So I must tell you that. So isn't it interesting you're saying that?
Well, I'm just feeling that so strongly, and that each one of us, especially if you have a strong connection to the land, because even I've been following Sadhguru's journey, his 36 days on his motorbike through America with getting in touch with the Native Americans, yes, and
wow.
the sadness and the things that they've been through and how invisible they've been. And he's bringing some visibility to these amazing tribes and their knowledge and all their customs and their rituals and the richness of this. And I love that, you know, here he is, this Indian yogi in the United States on his bike, connecting with all these amazing tribes. So things are happening. Yeah, now as we speak, there are some significant shifts and connections. And I do think that there has to be the repairing of the things that were inflicted upon the indigenous peoples. We can't change what happened in the past, but there must be an acknowledgement of what happened and how we are now going to do things differently. And that's forgiveness and the healing of the land.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense? Yes. Sorry.
It totally, no, because I've got, you know, you prompt a lot of thoughts in my head. Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And yeah, beautifully said. And it's something, you know, a good friend of mine, as you know, she heals the land of this kind of trauma. But I think you are absolutely spot on about the indigenous people. They have so much wisdom. They love the earth. They live in total balance and harmony with the earth. All of their medicines come from plants. They know how to douse for water. You know, I mean, it's going to be a lot happening in Australia around Uluru, as we know, going into the end of this year. So, you know, there's so much that we can rediscover that we have just obliterated in our modern, highly technological society, thinking we are now civilized, thinking we are clever, we are sophisticated, look at our gadgets, look at what we can do. We've lost that vital ancient connection to wisdom that those peoples, those indigenous peoples had, and we lose it at our peril. So I think part of this evolutionary leap is actually not just leaping forwards, but actually leaping backwards to that ancient wisdom, because they knew it. I mean, if we go back to the Vedas 6,000 years ago, there's understanding of everything in there, of the quantum, of medicine, of how our bodies work. 6,000 years ago, you know, they were way smarter then than we are now, way smarter. So I think you're beautifully said, Bracha, beautifully said.
And to me, this is going to be maybe a theme of 2021 with the Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn, the respecting of the elders, the respecting of the ancestors, bringing in that knowledge and seeing that it can take us forward into new systems and new healthy ways of operating as a globe. But we have to acknowledge these peoples. These peoples need to be really respected and dignified and revered and encouraged to come out and not be invisible.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it wonderful with what you're saying? Uranus is in Taurus.
Yes.
It's the connection to the earth.
It is. It's a and these peoples knew Uranus, they knew about the stars, they knew of the energy of the stars and the land.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we've got to somehow put that together somehow. And I think that will maybe be a big theme in this coming year. And also, what are the new systems? Because we will need some kind of structures. What are those new heartfelt structures that will need to be implemented gradually as our consciousness rises?
Yeah, beautifully said. And if we constantly live from the heart and keep our focus the heart and loving every person as much as, you know, doing for them as you would do for yourself, with that kind of love and openness, if we live from that point, not from fear or anger or whatever, automatically we'll create a frequency match to whatever's coming in. We'll create a loving society, even though we don't know the details, we don't know, you know, how it's going to be organized, we don't know. But if we just put out love, then we'll get a loving society that emerges from that, if that becomes our collective wave of consciousness.
I love that. Love, kindness, joyfulness, beautiful, Pammy. But these are the frequencies. If we can keep raising the frequency, then I think that this change doesn't have to be as tortuous necessarily. And it could be one that is a journey that we begin to see that we could take together, that could be just a journey of discovery. Because, I mean, most people have been bored to tears. I mean, watching a television for hours a day, taking antidepressants or drugs or all of these things. And, you know, all of that's been going on. So the society's been pretty sick for a long time. And COVID's just showing it to us.
Yes, in a very extreme way. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that really, really interesting? So, you know, that Uranus, that strong Uranus coming up, not only at this full moon on the 31st, but also all through next year, that's feeling alive, isn't it?
It's aliveness. You know,
it's vibrancy. It's the new. It's breaking anything that's stale and old and routine. You've always done it this way. It's saying, no, let's step off a cliff and live and have an adventure, just as you're doing in New Zealand.
But yes, it's not dull. It's an adventure. Don't look for comfort. I think that's the one tip I can give in terms of, you know, how to manage this. Look for going beyond your limitations. Wherever you're limiting yourself and keeping yourself small, look to go beyond that every day a little bit. And try to bring joy into whatever you can consciously.
Yeah. Vital. Keeping a very, you know, positive emotional set point is absolutely vital.
A set point. I love that, Pammy. Yeah, because there are always going to be things that come externally that may affect you, but they could be momentary effects. Yes. Rather than something that lasts for a week or you remember it and it happened a year ago. Yeah.
Yes. Crazy.
To move quickly. The Uranus energy suggests, and especially in Taurus is one of the slowest signs.
Yes.
So I feel that Uranus is saying, come on, get on with it. Up you go. You can't.
Because it's always speedy, isn't it? Super speedy, urgent. You know, it's got to be now. It's got to be quick. You know, hurry up. And it goes in quantum jumps as well. Far too slow. You know, so it always kind of speeds time up. So it's going to be interesting. But I think being conscious of how we're operating with being in such a massive transition, a transition that we haven't known in our lifetimes, we've got to be very conscious of what we're creating.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll just recreate the old and off we go again. I mean, I think that's very unlikely because the astrology isn't pointing in that direction, but the degree to which we create something much better and the speed at which we create it is down to our collective consciousness.
I love that. Oh, Pammy, thank you.
Haven't even had my morning porridge yet.
Of course, it's morning for you. You're not having a glass of wine with that porridge, are you?
Not in the mornings, no. No, the day hasn't been too stressy so far.
Oh, Pammy, it's always such a delight to be with you. I missed you these last couple of weeks. We usually connect a little more often, but we'll
just couldn't connect on the time zones and schedule.
I got the matchsticks out tonight, so
oh, bless you, bless you.
No, it's always fun, and I think when the energy is higher, you don't need as much sleep. Yeah, you're only conking out with sleep when the energy is, you know, you're kind of like you're sort of muddling through things, but
well, bless you. You've had very, very constrained circumstances, and I think you've been an absolute, triumph. Really, I think you've done.
I'm not out yet. Let's not count the chickens, right? When I'm out, we'll have a different conversation. We'll have another conversation, I hope, Pammy. And
yeah. No, I think you've been an absolute hero. An absolute hero.
I think you're wonderful, Pammy. I'm so grateful we're friends. You're my great buddy there, and it doesn't matter which end of the world we're on, we're always going to be friends. So,
of course, yeah. And we'll try and connect more often once you get out of your, you're out of quarantine. We'll be able to connect more often.
Fantastic. So, Pammy, I'm going to just to stop this recording. I've got to sort of go off, and I'll call you in a few minutes, all right? So
okay, lots of love.
Lots of love, Pammy. Lots of love to everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye.